Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and we are sitting down to have a bit of a Starfield discussion. So each of these types of videos has its own little birthplace, so to say. For this one, it was a Defining Duke write-in we got where we post on Patreon a thread, and people who are subscribed there will write in, we'll use it during the show. And someone wrote in about Starfield having some red flags that people aren't really talking about. Specifically that there hasn't been really any hands-on time with Starfield and that things are overly quiet right now. And that's why I'm calling it the calm before the storm. Before all the chaos goes down, we're here and now in the middle of July, nearing the end of July, and not much is happening. And Bethesda loves that. I'm going to get into why, because I know some people are starting to wave the red flags, and I get it, but I think we need to just simmer down a little bit, because I'm starting to see some fear-mongering online and whatnot, and I don't think it's necessary yet, at least. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into Starfield news, information, discussions, breakdowns, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Let's talk about this calm before the storms. Before we get into our major topic for the video, I want to ease into things by talking a bit about Starfield's more cagey marketing compared to what we see around the games industry. For a lot of the games industry, when things are quiet, oh boy, sound the alarms, things are going south. And this isn't to protect Starfield up front. It could be a disappointing game. I'm personally not thinking it's going to be, but this is coming from the YouTuber that talks about everything Starfield. Some of y'all got to settle down just a little bit, okay? We got a 45-minute Starfield Direct. 45 minutes. That's some of the most open, transparent looks at a video game before its launch we've ever got, and people are like, where's the trailer in July? I get it. I understand the expectation is we're leading into launch. We should still consistently see things with Starfield. For me, am I putting the cart before the horse by saying this? Possibly, but I feel pretty comfortable in saying, calm down, calm August. You're going to get pretty sick of how much Starfield you're going to see. It's probably going to be in ads before my videos fire up. It's going to be on banners across various gaming websites, whether it be IGN, Peer, Xbox, the list goes on. You're going to see a lot of Starfield marketing soon. And that means more trailer breakdowns, more discussions. We will have much to talk about. I get people are looking for significant things, but this is where the internet does kind of ruin things for themselves. Like, we have a good thing going on right now. The game showed really well. People are on board, excited. Don't let impatience ruin things. I get it. Look, I'd love to be sitting here talking about Starfield every single video if I could. I have that much authentic excitement for the game, but that's not the case. Bethesda wants it quiet. I like that it's a little bit quiet and that we can kind of ride into a BGS game, and for once, it actually may not be controversial. I'm a big fan of that personally. But now, let's get into this whole thing with previews. So I'm seeing a couple of people write in about this on Defining Duke. I've also seen people write in my comment section about this. The lack of hands-on time for Starfield can be concerning to some, and I think that's valid because there are, for some at least, who didn't like Fallout 4, and I personally don't validate that opinion because I like Fallout 4 a lot. I think it's a great game. But for some people, it was a massive letdown. Now, Starfield and Fallout 4 right now, in my eyes, have this very parallel hype cycle marketing track to a T almost. It's scary reminiscent of that, where there's a lot of calmness and excitement within the community. Nothing can go wrong. And even down to no previews for Starfield really being done. The only thing we have right now, which we covered here on the channel, is a 1-hour, heavily curated preview by IGN's Ryan McCaffrey. And it was Todd Howard who pretty much walked them through it, had them loading in specific saves to get a smidge, a small taste of what Starfield has to offer that could almost, for some, hardly be qualified as a preview. Like, compared to what I've done in the past, previews are like you sit down for at least 2 hours and you just play a section of the game. Some previews are much more open, some are much more closed off. IGN's preview of Starfield sounded like one of the most closed off, very contained previews I've personally seen, which is something I talked a bit on in that video. Now, some folks are saying, well, because that was a very specific kind of preview and no one else is getting hands-on time, and you look at the clock, time's a-ticking. What's going on? Why isn't Matty and other outlets played Starfield yet? What's going on there? This is where Bethesda is a very unpredictable beast if we don't pay attention to their every move. Before I dig a little deeper, the reason these previews are important is because a lot of you who are industry enthusiasts already connected the dots you think about review codes. So for those who are unfamiliar with the process, usually there is a preview period, which with Starfield being such a massive game, you probably want to have either in the latter part of July, which that's not happening, or the early part of August. And given that Starfield is such a massive game and that typically you'd expect press, content creators to have enough time to play the game to develop their own opinions, come the second half of August, that could be dedicated to review territory. Typically, these preview and review cycles are not stacked directly on top of one another, which is why, again, people are wondering what is with the caginess of Starfield's marketing. So I'm going to give my own interpretation of what's happening here. I think Bethesda sees the pre-order numbers are on the incline, and this doesn't mean that a preview event for Starfield will never happen. It could happen within 2 weeks out from launch, but usually it's timed in a way where the developer can account for some feedback. But given that Phil Spencer has said every single QA tester at Microsoft is in on Starfield, they may not need people like me. However, I wouldn't say that a preview or lack thereof is a barometer for how many bugs and glitches are going to be in Starfield. Here's why. When you look at Fallout 4, right, they did one big gameplay showcase, E3 2015, one of the best showings we've seen of a video game as far as I'm concerned. And from there, Bethesda just rode that thing all the way into November with a couple of special trailers, a launch trailer. Otherwise, very little else happened in that hype cycle. We had a couple of updates for Fallout Shelter, but it was mostly Bethesda pumping us full of merch and hype. And actually, if you go over to the gear store for Bethesda and you look at what they have here for Starfield, t-shirts, the game itself, a skateboard deck, a jacket, a Vasco statue, a hat, a mug, a desk mat, a journal. They have, of course, the Constellation Edition, which we know is the little watch you get, which I missed out on the pre-order for, which I'm very bummed about, but I digress. They have tons of stuff here, and this is only scratching the surface. There are going to be more. There's going to be unique partnerships. This is identical to what I saw with Fallout 4, where we were like, oh, my money. Same thing happening here with Starfield. Now, to those waving the red flags about the previews, like I'm saying, the marketing here is the same. When there aren't hands-on previews, I don't know if that spells good news or bad news, because as someone who's been to a Bethesda Game Studios preview event for, you guessed it, Fallout 76, I personally interpret these set of moves here as Bethesda fires these up, maybe if they're feeling a little unsure about how the game may be received and want to inject a little hype and attention and additional pre-orders into it, because businesses are going to business. The reason I say that, Fallout 4 didn't get any previews. Didn't need it. It sold 12 million copies in its first weekend, which is insane for a single-player RPG in 2015. Absolutely nutty numbers right there. 76, I don't know about this. A lot of the consumers unsure. Online game, Fallout, can this really work? Let's get some hands on this from the press, from people that they trust, the consumers trust, and let's go ahead and see if we can get the pre-order numbers up, right? Redfall, oh man, internal QA looking at, oh boy, I don't know about the quality here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get some hands on this. Let's get people talking about it. Let's get some hype built up, because no one really dragged Redfall out of its preview. It was more so like there are things we're uncertain about because the preview was only an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's not enough to tell if a game is going to be great or bad, because some games slow warm-up, some games are bad over time. There are very few golems out there that are immediately awful. So what I'm saying is that I personally view it as someone who's been to these Bethesda preview events, and I've seen how they rock and roll and seen when they decided to put them together and when they decided not to, that to me, I feel if they're doing okay and they see pre-order numbers are up and they see excitement, why risk tampering with any of that? It seems like Todd Howard is remaining the spokesperson for this game that pretty much we already had confirmed via Emil Pagliarulo, where he signed an NDA and he's like, stop asking me questions. I can't talk about anything that Todd hasn't spoken about, so stop asking me. So to me, it seems like they're very much funneling all of what should be known about the game through Todd, which is an immense amount of trust for Todd, but naturally it's been earned, and that they may not need folks like me to go out and play the game and talk about it. However, what I will say in defense of that, to play devil's advocate with myself, is Bethesda has undergone a lot of change to get out of what I would call their more old school ways. The reason I call it old school is because Bethesda was very traditional. Bring the press in. Who are these content creators? They're not a part of the press. No, we'll give them that stuff later. There have been winds of change blowing through there. There's some great new staff there that's been trying to bring people like me into the forefront and just get my hands on stuff. You all know how I roll. I just want to be able to play the game, deliver my impressions, and let you all know about what you may be spending your money on. So I, again, wouldn't read too strongly into the calmness, because the reality is that I think this is what Bethesda wants. When you look at Starfield very broadly and every little conversation happening within this entire community, it's been pretty controversy free. The most controversial thing that's really happened for this game, as far as I'm concerned, is the AMD exclusivity partnership and how FSR may kind of wipe out the possibility of DLSS being there at launch for PC gamers. Now, modders will fix it, but it's going to be done in an unofficial capacity, and that's frustrating, again, to those who are on PC, and especially so because, like, look, that's where all the mods are. You want the PC experience for something like a Bethesda Game Studios game to be the absolute best it possibly can be. So, is it a bit of a red flag that there hasn't been a Starfield preview? To me, I personally look at this as par for the course. To me, this calm before the storm is eerily similar to Fallout 4. Even as a creator, I'll get into that a little bit, that sense of restlessness, I remember this feeling with Fallout 4. You know, I cover the game a lot, and I try to make sure, it sounds weird, but y'all know I got a job to do. Like, I'll wake up, get my breakfast, and I will check for news of most of the games I cover. I'll look for Starfield, Cyberpunk, I'll look for BioWare stuff, and the list goes on. Xbox, of course, I'll see what's going on in the realm of the things I mostly cover, but Starfield's top of the list. And yeah, there hasn't been much at all. And Bethesda's probably pretty happy with that, because let's be honest, Bethesda Game Studios fans, we're a greedy bunch. We like to see a lot of the game. We want to know what's happening every minute of every hour of every day for Starfield and whatever Bethesda Game Studios is working on top of that. But look, we got a 45-minute Starfield Direct that I got to say, and granted, I watched it in tandem like many of you out there with the Xbox Showcase. I was starting to feel almost overwhelmed with how much I had taken in. It was a lot. And at a certain point, I actually kind of understand why Bethesda Game Studios would go a little bit more radio silence. Again, this doesn't mean that things aren't happening. I think they're kind of waiting for August. And once August hits, that's where you're going to get, you know, your launch trailer. That's where you're going to get more pre-order trailers. Maybe if previews ever happen, I think that's when it does strike, is in August. If anything at all, because again, at a certain point, we're just getting a little close to the wire. I think for Fallout 76, when I went to that event, that was 2 or 3 weeks out from launch. So again, I would put it in August, if anything at all. The fact that it's quiet now makes a lot of sense. Back to my original point, you know, look, 45-minute Direct. Last year, we got about 15 minutes of gameplay. We've got a lot of interviews. This game has technically been marketed over the course of since 76 has been announced. And Bethesda has managed to walk this line and sort of navigate it without spoiling much at all, which is kind of impressive. Now, hopefully that doesn't speak to the lack of things to spoil there, but given the vast amount of cities and characters and quests and factions, I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. But there's a certain point where people got to realize Bethesda's shown us a lot. And I know we're in an industry where it's like, what have you done for me lately? But, I mean, look, I'm going to just have to defend Bethesda a little bit here and say, I think some people, and it's not a lot, I'm not pretending it's a lot, but I think some people who are viewing these as red flags need to collect themselves and realize Bethesda, if I were to wager a guess, this is not because I have communicated with them or have any inside sources, if I were to wager a guess, I feel like they've probably looked at things and said, we have done a lot here. And yeah, we'll get a new trailer probably next month. If we don't, that would be kind of strange. But yeah, we'll get some new stuff in August. But if there's no previews or anything, to me, as someone who's covered Bethesda Game Studios since 2010 on this channel, yeah, it's par for the course. And I'm not necessarily surprised by any of the behavior I'm seeing. And to me, as someone who was very happy with Fallout 4, to see a similar pattern there with Starfield, I think is actually kind of good. So to me, also, look, I got to say one last point here. I don't want to go on too long for y'all. I just think that we're in a day and age where sometimes these companies talk too much. We know too much going into a game's launch, and it's a constant thing. You know about every mechanic. If you watch every trailer, you've seen almost every major location in a game. And so the only new thing for you is that you get to experience it with the controller in your hands at your own pace. With Starfield, it feels like there's a world of surprise, a universe of surprises within. And I'm happy that Bethesda's kind of keeping things close to the vest. Can that lead to ultimately the hype firing back on them and being a disappointment? Yes. But as a video game fan, like many of you, looking at Starfield and what we're seeing, I feel like no game's doing what Starfield's doing. I feel confident and comfortable in my hype, and that Bethesda could kind of ride into launch with just one more trailer, and I'd be good to go. We'll see in due time what they do, if there's any preview events. If you were asking me what my guess would be, I mean, again, with the new staff there, I could see them throwing together a preview event just so that we get some hands-on time, and there's no harm in increasing that hype through positive hands-on impressions. But I think if Bethesda sees an incline in pre-order numbers and they're like, we're doing okay, they look at Fallout 4 as an example of how that worked out really well for them. At the end of the day, they don't care what reviewers like me say. If they're getting money, that's all that matters for them. Is in the case of Xbox, as long as they're getting Game Pass subscribers, that's all that matters to them. Then they may not throw anything together at all. But this is kind of where we're at right now as a community. You know, there's a little bit of restlessness I'm noticing. And I get it. Like I said, I check the news every day. I'm right there with you all. I'm very excited about what Starfield has in store for us, and I'm sure we'll hear more in August. So those are just my thoughts. Again, don't want to go on too long here, but wanted to leave you all with a little Starfield discussion here today. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, take excellent care of yourselves, and I am so looking forward to seeing your thoughts down below, so do fire away. With that, take great care of yourselves again once more, and be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.